Next on our agenda is a presentation from Simon Haslam, CMC, who is speaking to us from the UK, I believe. And he's going to talk to us all about our National Consulting Index initiative. Simon, over to you.
Nick, thank you very much. And hello to everybody. Colleagues, let me just set the scene first, and then we'll get into sharing the data. You might be familiar with the National Consulting Index project. This was created in 2018 by the ICMCI, and it was created to investigate how management consulting varies across the world. And our route into this was to recognize that some countries of the world have a more developed, stronger management consulting sector or industry than others. And the NCI project sought to understand the reasons why and to explore mechanisms for helping areas to strengthen the management consulting industry. I'm going to share some slides, and my slides are going to be a summary of the report and the investigation work we've done in 2025. But the slides are a prelude to a report. So I will use the slides to talk through the NCI project for this year. And then shortly after International Consultants Day, the report will be made available, which goes into the detail for every geography in the world. So here we go. This is me setting the scene. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll give you a little bit of the background to the NCI. And then we'll go into the methodology. We'll talk about the headline findings, and we'll talk about some input we've had from various IMCs around the world. Clearly, a project of this nature doesn't happen individually. So thanks go out to Alan Blackman, not on the call at the moment, but Alan did a tremendous job, especially around the quantitative analysis. Tamara Abdel-Jaber has been core to the project from its inception. And also thanks to the core ICMCI executive, Kazema and Tarima, for an immense amount of secondary data research and for facilitating the meetings as we worked through the project. So in essence, what we have in the ICMCI project on the NCI is to recognize that if you look across the world, management consulting currently is a massive industry. Using US dollars as the currency, it is worth approximately 337 billion across the world. And when you look at the density of management consulting, globally, this is a worldwide figure, that management consulting generates 0.3% approximately of the world's global domestic product. Now, that is a global figure. And what the NCI project seeks to do is to go deeper within countries and to look at how that figure varies across the world. As I said, the project was initiated by the ICMCI in 2018, and each year we update it, we bring in further data, fresher data, and we try and further develop the equation that it gives us the insights. So as we go into the project, what we seek to do is to try and create a computational model that is capable of robustly estimating the size of the management consulting sector. Now, as we go through the presentation, this is abbreviated as MCS, and to try and understand how that varies in relation to each country's economic output. We refer to that as GDP. So when you see MCS, it refers to the size of the management consulting sector, and GDP is the strength of the local economy. And we're seeking to do this to try and learn to help ICMCI become a thought leader and the world's most authoritative summary and reference point for the nature of the global management consulting sector, but also to help local IMCs to develop their own sectors and their own industries in their own countries. Now, the methodology has been refined since we started this project 7 years ago. And to do the research, we use what we refer to as reference data. And we purchased this data from a research company, a company called SGR, Source Global Research. And all SGR do for a living is to conduct very robust research into predominantly the professional sector. And within that, there is, of course, management consulting. So we purchased the reference data for the management consulting sectors for 35 countries around the world. And those data have all been developed by robust methodology and, importantly, consistent methodology, which enables us to use these as a reference point, as a foundation to create the estimation of the remaining countries across the world. So what we seek to do is to use the foundation data from SGR to create an equation which is capable then of being applied to other countries. And they are north of 200 countries around the world, as we know. So with that in mind, we purchased the data from SGR, and we use this data to create an equation and test an equation that could give us the ability to capably estimate the size of the management consulting sector in other countries beyond the 35. We've done this progressively by developing an algorithm, by testing correlation and doing regression and analysis. And this is where Alan led the project very capably. And to try and understand the range of factors that are capable of predicting a country's relative strength of management consulting. So as we work through the methodology, the point I'm making here is we purchased data from 35 countries from Source Global Research. We created an equation and we tested that by regression analysis and tested its correlation. And that was enabled us to then to provide very capable estimates of the management consulting sector for additional 48 countries. What we were then able to do is for the 48 countries where the algorithm was out of scope, and I'll explain why that might be the case in a moment or two, we applied the global NCI, and I shared that earlier on. So the global NCI was 0.3% to a country's GDP, which enabled us to then estimate the management consulting sector size for additional 106 countries in the world. Now, there are 21 countries we couldn't touch, and that was predominantly because the GDP figures for those countries is not safely known, as in accurately known. But the point I'm making is that the NCI project is the world's most comprehensive illumination of the global management consulting sector on a country by country basis. And I think that's something that we collectively in the ICMTI should be justifiably proud of and acknowledge. So if we go into this in a little bit more detail, here are the data of the 35 countries that we purchased from SGR. So this is what we refer to as reference data. And these countries were chosen because of their variety. There are big economies, there are small economies, there are Western economies, there are Eastern economies, there are established economies, there are developing economies. And by creating a sample which has variance in it, it enables us then to build a foundation that is broad in scope. Now, I'm not going to go through these data. You may see your own ICMTI country sitting on the screen there. And what we're showing here on those columns is the US dollar million value for the management consulting sector for these countries in the foundation, in the reference sample. And having done that, we then, with Alan's help, tested permutations of what we refer to as independent variables. And these are on the screen. Now, the independent variables are global, applicable secondary data metrics. There's a metric called the Corruption Perception Index, which is the degree to which an economy is likely to demonstrate corruptive practice or not. There's a metric called the Education Index, which is a global metric about the level of educational attainment within a country. Economic growth rate we understand, there's a metric called the e-government development index, which is a metric about the degree to which digital technologies are embraced by the public sector. GDP, which is a metric around the strength of economic output, and then GDP per capita brings that into line with the size of the population. And it recognizes that a country may have a big GDP, but that's spread about a broad population, where each individual it can then, on an average basis, is contributing relatively small amounts compared to countries with a moderate GDP, but with a very small population, where each individual's contribution GDP on average is relatively high. There's a metric called Global Innovation Index, which is an assessment about a country's culture and processes for being entrepreneurial and innovative. Those of you who've studied culture will be very familiar with the work of Gerd Hofstede. And Gerd Hofstede said you can look at various parts of the world, various regions, various countries, and look at it through the lens of 6 cultural dimensions. And we tested each of those 6 in the creation of the NCI equation. There's an index called the Index of Economic Freedom. And this is an understanding of the degree to which entrepreneurial enterprise is encouraged in a country compared to those countries which run more of a centralized planned approach. Now, as I go through these, there is absolutely no judgment implied. And all I'm doing here is drawing attention to what global bodies have created as ways of understanding variance across the world. There is, of course, the use of size of population. So national population is one of the metrics we tested. And another independent variable is the fruits of ICMCI work in this project previously, which is the NCI from previous projects. We also looked at R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP, and that metric is known for the vast majority of countries around the world. And then the United Nations Human Development Index. And this is an index about personal freedom and personal encouragement, about human rights. And we would recognize that that indeed varies when we look across the planet. And then we look then at the final index tested was the Liberal Democratic Index. And that is the degree to which, when we look at the way that the public sector and the ability to have personal agency in the election of government is present or not. So these are globally robust data points, not created by ICMCI, with the exception of that NCI from previous years. And our confidence is we are looking at reference points which have the numbers and the research methodology underpinning each one. Now, there are other variables, and we looked at those, and we typically had to dismiss them or reject them because, number one, they might be not globally applicable. And there's no point trying to create a global index if only half the countries in the world are understood through that metrics. We also rejected some because they were outdated. And okay, we are now well the right side of the pandemic, but sometimes when you look at indicators, the last times they were refreshed was pre-pandemic, and it would make them very, very frail then to assume that they had validity going forward. So this then is the 2025 NCI equation. Now, I'm not going to go deep into this. Those of you for a feel for stats, I'm hoping you can see the regression result, the R-squared number, and what you're going to see there is a really, really high degree of tested validity. But the second bullet point shines a light on the equation. And the equation is this. The log management consulting sector value for 2024 is minus 5.819 plus the log of the 2024 GDP multiplied by 0.930 plus the 2023 NCI score times 284.202. And the only reason that equation sits on the screen is because we have the ability through digital data manipulation and analytics to run multiple regression tests using all the variables and to try and figure out which combination of variables best fits the variance from those 35 reference countries. Now, this would have been impossible a decade ago. But advances in digital analytics, advances in the understanding of the way we would work with massive data sets enables this to happen. And the point I'm making now is now we have this equation in place. What we can then use it to is to predict the size of other countries of the world management consulting sectors beyond the 35. And so going on to that, I'm not going to go deep into these slides because there's an awful lot of numbers. But when you read the slides, and the slides will come out after the presentation, when you see the report, what we do is we offer an estimate of the US dollar size of the management consulting sector for 189 countries around the world. Now, that puts us in a very strong position of both comprehension of being able to support also IMCs in those countries. And so these are the data points for those countries based on regression analysis. And these are the data points where we have applied the thinking around national GDP and the global NCI. So what I've done is just to explain the background to the NCI equation, say a little bit about how the NCI equation came about, give you the confidence the equation is based on a robust reference source of 35 countries which individually exhibit variety when they are brought together, and explained that that foundation has enabled ICMCI to have visibility on the relative strength of management consulting sector for 189 countries around the world. Now, I really like this slide, and it's a little bit of a heat map, and this plays to my point. And we don't need to go into the detail, but unsurprisingly, when you look at the strength of our management consulting sector, the NCI project points out that it varies around the world, and that's what the NCI project is about. And when you look at this map, the darker the color, the higher percentage of GDP comes from management consulting. The lighter the color, the less proportion of gross domestic product or economic output comes from management consulting. And again, there is absolutely no judgment implied. But it's us for to understand that if you've got economies where management consulting is very well established, how an IMCI might work with local consulting firms and local economies is going to be different to those economies where management consulting is relatively underdeveloped. And this is how ICMCI can illuminate practice and support IMCs who are different in different economies. And this is so, so important, if I come back to Nick's comment, about the imperative of us being the guiding light in the professionalization of the sector. It is clear from this diagram to me that one approach does not fit all. Because sectors are different stages of maturity around the world, the way that local IMCs do things needs to be different because they are working in very different contexts. We are not moving homogeneously forward. And so that's the nature of the NCI project. So what I've done here is to talk about the numbers part of the project. As I say, there is a fuller report which goes deeper into the creation of the algorithm. It goes deeper into providing the metrics for 189 countries. I hope you find it useful. But as you know, those of you who worked on the NCI project and seen the presentations in previous years, there is always another part to the project, is where we go out to the IMCs and we seek IMC input. So in this part of the project, we asked each of the IMCs about what they were learning about their local markets. In their discussion about national consulting sectors. We asked them about whether they had an estimate of the size of the market, their degree of membership, what was influencing their local country's management consulting sectors, what the challenges were facing the sector, and what the forecasts were for the sector. We received 25 responses, and if you were one of the IMCs who responded, thank you very much. We asked the questions, we put a burden on your time, and you were gracious enough to help us with the research. And the next slides that come go into the main themes. What we in ICMCI, in the IMC, in the NCI project team learnt from local IMCs around sectors, data, forecasts, challenges, and commercial opportunities for consulting firms to follow up on. And as Nick said, when you do research, there is a numerate part, and we've covered that off in the previous slides, but there's also the wraparound, the qualitative data, the texture around the numbers. So this is where we go next. And so an overview would be this. IMCs are absolutely critical because in each country, they provide the focal point for the custodianship and the professionalization of management consulting in their geography. But the real challenge is this. They are, for the very most part, minority voices. So when you look at their membership, it tends to be a fraction of the size of a country's practicing consultants. When we look at what IMCs understood, we learned from the responses that nearly half the respondents didn't have an estimate of the size or the value of their national consulting market. So straight away, this is one way where the NCI project can help. We have provided that estimate. And then when you look at the amalgamation of the feedback from IMCs, there are four main themes around the need to advance professionalization of management consulting. So here are the themes. The growing need for standards, and in many areas, the absence of accreditation frameworks or robust certificate processes. And that, in some geographies, is a barrier to consulting being credible. There are real challenges around talent. And it's not just for consultants, it is the client side as well. And this is to recognize the pressure is absolutely immense. And the shortage of qualified, well-trained consultants, and I make the distinction when I'm using reference to the words qualified and well-trained, and their ability to carry the flag, if you like, and to institutionalize that, I think is the right word, certification. The pressure of digital. And we would recognize one of the prime movers in terms of whether we are working in the public sector, when we're working as a non-governmental organization, where we're working private sector, the almost digital literacy of firms, whether we be client or consultant, in working forward. And it is questioning issues around expertise, whether we are on our A game, questioning with more dispersed forms of business development, trustworthiness and client impact. And the final one, this is coming back, the mixed market maturity. The landscape is incredibly fragmented. Some parts of the world, IMCs are knowledgeable, they have a grasp of, they have a robust certification process. In other parts of the world, this is not the case. We asked IMCs to look forward, and we are happy to report that out of our sample of 25 respondents, 2/3 were expecting growth in their sector over the next 12 months. And isn't that encouraging? But 40% were seeing a decline. There were a couple of countries who expected stability, and 2 countries who were unsure whether their local consulting sectors were going to grow or decline. And I'm going to go further into the sample that said growth. I'm going to go further into the sample that said decline. So as I said, 2/3 of respondents were projecting growth of their management consulting sectors. And these are the reasons behind their responses. So if you're working in an economy which is on the ascendancy, then you reasonably expect rising client demand. Because as we know from the NCI equation, the strength of a management consulting sector is directly related to a country's GDP. That's the basis of NCI. If you're working in an economy which is embracing digital transformation, it is creating, as we know, opportunities for consultants. Another reason for growth is market maturity. When local markets almost cross the tipping point, we have recognized professionalization and accreditation that is raising client awareness of the ability to embrace consultants. When countries are undergoing what is referred to on a slide as economic reform, so public sector restructuring, major infrastructure initiatives, it creates opportunities for consultant. Where countries are hungry for talent on the client side. When we look at leadership development programs, talent acquisition, it of course creates opportunities for consultants. And when countries are embracing multifaceted challenges, and hot on the heels of Robert's presentation around sustainability, for countries genuinely embracing sustainability and ESG, countries genuinely looking to move beyond their national border to international, it undoubtedly creates opportunities for consulting. So the point I'm saying is, if our consulting market is on the ascendancy, what we see on the screens are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reasons that are driving the appetite. Right, conversely, 40% of the respondents pointed to a pessimistic forecast, which means they were predicting their local management consulting sectors to reduce between now and 12 months' time. And so the reasons for the decline are on the screen. Firstly, the talent battle. When there is the proverbial handbrake on the talent market, talent shortages stifle the ability to do things around organizations. When there are economic pressures on budgets, when a company is fighting to remain sustainable economically, it can really reduce the appetite to spend money on consulting. And the rider is especially from governmental public sector funds. Many people who commented draw attention to technological disruption. And I don't know how it is in your own worlds, but in my very modest consulting practice based in the United Kingdom, we are already seeing AI in automation changing the way that consulting happens. And so the point I'm making here is it is a threat to traditional consulting models. And if I come back to Nick and the dragonfly, it is an invitation for us to embrace, not to be traditional in this respect. Then we get countries where there is regulatory and political uncertainty. And I was nearly going to put the word tariffs on the screen. And for me, tariffs is an indication, not the only thing. But when there is ambiguity, when there are sanctions, when there is unstable legal environments, what it means is investments are withheld. So overseas investments come less. Internal commitments to capital projects and major projects are just put on hold. And that just, dampens down the appetite for consulting. When we've got the unfortunate behavior of the predominantly large consulting firms, and you know who the culprits are, I know who the culprits are, when you have scandals, when you have ethical indiscretions, what that tends to do is to damage public sector. And what it means then, the credibility of consultants, of those people commissioning work, is reduced. And the final one, in countries who are at the point of thinking through different business models, sometimes they change the way they do things. and their ability to do it without consultants reduces the scope of the market. So what I've done over the previous slides is to point out that 2/3 of respondents see opportunity and growth in their national markets, but 40%, around 40% say, yeah, unfortunately, we don't see it that way. We see it going the other way. And you will know in which side your own local markets are on. And if I were to bring this to a summary, what I'm going to offer in terms of bringing together the data from the IMCs is that I think for IMCs locally, the biggest challenges that we're going to face are to do with talent, are to do with the adaptation to technology, and are due to how we as dragonflies can cope in markets which are evolving in different ways in different time frames. So final slide of content from the IMCs is this. We did indeed ask IMCs to say, okay, if you were to guide a consultant to think about business development or design a new consulting practice, where is not the low-hanging fruit, but where are the real opportunities for consultants? And I don't think there's any surprises on the screen. But if I were a local IMC, this is probably where I'm helping my member consultants strengthen their own capability. We understand the strong demand for consultants who can guide digital strategy. Digital transformation, top of the list, no surprises. Digital is the biggest driver of change in the world, as we know. There are massive opportunities around sustainability and ESG. And as Robert said, the timeliness of the white paper on sustainability from the ICMCI is absolutely bang on. There are the opportunities to help consultants engage with the public sector. The public sector governments have a style. There is a way of working with them, and if we as IMCs can prepare consultants to work in that domain, then there can be strong commercial attractiveness. There are some countries in the world, not all countries, there are some countries in the world with a very well developed, what we refer to as SME enterprise base. That is small and medium-sized enterprises, smaller firms. And if you're one of those countries, the increasing importance of that sector of business to be contributing towards GDP is apparent. And therefore, the ability of consultants to support small and medium enterprises is there. And I think the challenge of us realizes that small and medium-sized enterprises, they have tremendous needs of support and help, but they tend not to be the most cash rich. So how we facilitate the relationship between consultants and small and medium-sized enterprises becomes an opportunity as well as a challenge. And then the final one, given the data we've shared previously, no surprises here. Massive opportunities for consultants to help with leadership development, and that contribution for us to be part of the solution to the talent and workforce transformation. So folks, that was the final piece of data from the IMCs. And I said before, thank you to the IMCs who gave of their time and shared their views. And for me, that is the second part of the NCI project. The NCI project seeks to understand national variance in the presence of management consulting. We've been working on this for 7 years now. Each year, the algorithm gets further and further refined, and it has now enabled the ICMCI to be the world's most authoritative source about how management consulting varies around the planet. The NCI project also provides not only the numbers, but the sentiment. And thank you to the IMCs providing that sentiment. And so, as a conclusion, this is the guidance that myself, Tamara, Alan, and everybody else involved in the NCI project would offer to IMCs. Use the dollar value that we are showing you to help supplement your own local knowledge. Some IMCs have your own local methods of creating the value, the understanding of value of the management consulting sector. But according to this sample, nearly half don't. So use it to best effect. Talk to policymakers, talk to consultants. It gives you an extra point of reference. The professionalism agenda is imperative. So use and promote the professionalization frameworks which have been developed over years and centrally. And no surprises, I'm referring to CMC, I'm referring to ISO 20700, and I'm referring to the ICMCI competencies. And we can use those in local profile raising, practice develop initiatives, creation of local programs. So at the moment as IMCs, we engage with the minority of the market. The scope is absolutely enormous to be part of the solution to professionalize. Further develop the campaigns to promote membership and to strengthen the voice. Every time ICMCI provides something centrally, it is the ability to talk locally. And then if we were to, and this is we being the NCI project, were to guide IMCs, how do you become more valuable to local consultants? Think about the developing support you're providing around that AI digital pathway. Think about the development support you're providing around ESG and sustainability and the reference to the white paper. Think about the development support you're providing to help consultants become stronger at helping their clients develop talent and leadership. And think about the engagement with the public sector and the SME sector, the small, medium-sized enterprise sector, where it is applicable. So folks, shortly after International Consultants Day, you'll receive the slide deck and you'll receive the full report. I hope you find the slide deck useful. I hope you find the report useful. So that, from my point, concludes me updating you all, thank you, on the NCI project and talking through where we have got to with this year's research and where the findings lead to. So thank you very much for your attention. I thoroughly appreciate it.
Okay, Simon, thanks for that. I think, unfortunately, we have run out of time, and it's my great sadness to have to bring this Consultants Day to a close. But let me thank a few people. Thank you, Simon, for a fascinating presentation. And really, thank you very much for doing the summary that I was going to do at the end of the session. I think there's not much more to add to what Simon has said as a result of the NCI project.